This is Wessel from ownyourweather.com, and in this video we're discussing what a home or professional home weather station measures. Before we get started, if you don't find anything what you want from this video, anything is a bit unclear or you want some more detailed information, I left a link to the actual article in the description below the video, so you can always go and read it on your own time if anything is a bit unclear. I've also included links to two separate videos related to this one. First one being what a home weather station is. If you're a bit unfamiliar with that, you can always go and have a look at that video. Also, how to install a home weather station. Some hints and tips as to what to remember, what to avoid. You can always go and have a look at that. Okay, back to what a professional home weather station measures. We know it measures the weather. That's obvious. But what specifically does it measure? Well, it measures a variety of different atmospheric conditions or elements of the weather. So let's take a look at them individually. Let's start with the first and probably the most familiar one to all of you, which is temperature. But temperature is just one of a number of variables that's being measured by both professional and home weather stations. They also measure humidity, rainfall, wind speed, wind direction, air pressure, light intensity, and UV index. And now that we know what the primary variables are that are being measured by your different weather stations, let's go and have a closer look at each one individually. Again, starting with temperature. Obviously, temperature is something we are all familiar with. We all know when we feel cold, when we feel warm. When it's cold outside, when the sun is warm, we are all familiar with this. But what exactly is temperature? Temperature is the measurement of the amount of kinetic energy present in the air, which manifests itself physically through the experience of heat or cold. Like I said, we've all experienced it, we know exactly what it is. Now the scales used to measure temperature are Celsius, Fahrenheit and Kelvin. Depending on which country you're in, which field, study or field you're in, this might vary. But one thing that remains constant is the instrument being used, which is a thermometer. Now this may vary from the old analog mercury thermometers to modern digital thermometers being used in the medical field, in meteorology and a lot of other fields as well. What is important to remember though is that the temperature that your device is recording, both outside and inside the home, wherever your sensors are situated, is not just there to provide you with the indication of what the weather is like currently, but it also might project what the weather will be like in the future. For instance, a rising temperature might indicate that a warm front or fair weather is on its way. A drop in temperature might indicate that a cold front is on the way, etc. But the temperature being displayed is not simply an indication of current conditions, but maybe a forecast of upcoming conditions. And that is temperature. Moving on from temperature, we're looking at another important variable, humidity. Let's first have a look at what humidity is. Humidity is the amount of water vapor that is present in the atmosphere at any specific time. Water vapor is nothing more than water in a state of gas. Although humidity and its effect can usually be felt, it is normally invisible to the naked eye. However, we all know when we are experiencing humidity alongside warm weather, we tend to feel a little bit more lethargic. The heat tends to feel more severe than it really is. And similarly, when you're experiencing cold condition, if you're experiencing cold conditions and it's humid as well, it also has effect. The bite of the cold just seems that little bit more severe. And humidity also plays a part, just like temperature, in the ability of a weather station to forecast upcoming event. A rise in humidity might indicate that rainy weather is on the way. A drop in humidity, that fair weather is on the way. It's not always that simple, but it gives you a good indication and it helps the weather station to make more accurate forecasts. And the device used to measure humidity is called a hydrometer. And from humidity we move on to precipitation, specifically rainfall. Okay, so what is precipitation? Precipitation is water in its different states, which form after condensation turn water vapor into its liquid or solid form, which falls to the ground after it becomes too heavy to stay suspended in the air. Precipitation can take the form of rain, snow, hail, or even graupel. Now, most home or personal weather stations can only measure rainfall, in other words, precipitation in its liquid form. When it comes to your bigger weather services, however, they have more elaborate devices and instruments in place that can measure precipitation in its liquid, solid or even gaseous state. The device being used to measure rainfall is called a rain gauge. You might wonder what the use of measuring rainfall is. Now, apart from measuring just exactly how much rain has fallen, when you've got something like a software application that records all your different measurements, you can use it to measure the amount of rainfall that has fallen now as well as in the past, and use it to predict future rainfall patterns. And next up is wind. Not just wind speed, but wind direction as well. Let's first define wind. Wind is the large-scale movement of air from an area of high to an area of low pressure in the atmosphere. The speed and strength of wind are determined by the distance between the low pressure and high pressure areas, as well as the difference in air pressure. So, why is wind important? Let's look at first at the wind speed itself. Wind speed itself doesn't just give you an indication of how windy it is. The speed of wind also gives an indication of maybe an upcoming weather event, how close that weather event is and how severe it might be. The wind direction also gives you an indication, depending on where you are located, of coming weather. Certain winds might indicate fair weather, certain winds might indicate stormy weather, and depending from which direction the wind blows, it will give you all your weather station a better idea and give it a better chance to make an accurate forecast. The device used to measure the speed of wind is called an anemometer, and the direction of wind is measured by either a windsock or a weather vane. Now, you've probably seen your windsock at airports blowing close to runways, and you've probably seen weather vanes on top of buildings like churches, but also on home weather station sensor arrays. And this brings us to air pressure, also known as barometric or atmospheric pressure. Air pressure is the result of the pressure created by the weight of the air in the Earth's atmosphere. It is also called barometric pressure, named after the instrument used to measure air pressure. In other words, a barometer is used to measure air pressure. Now, it's a bit hard to explain, but air pressure is the amount of or the number of molecules in a certain volume of air. Specifically, when it's very hot, there's a lot of energy between the molecules and they're spaced further apart from each other. While when the weather is cold, there are less energy between the different molecules and they are closer together, which means they weigh more. In other words, it's a high pressure system. However, when it's warmer, there's more energy, more space between the molecules. In other words, they weigh less, and that results in a low pressure system. Now, this is not always the case, but in general, this is a guideline you can go by. From the items on the list, you would have noticed that I've included UV index as well as light intensity as two of the variables that most professional or advanced home weather stations measure as well. I'm not going to describe that in detail in this video, since they don't play as crucial a role in weather forecasting or in the functionality of professional, but specifically home weather stations. I'm not saying that they don't play a role whatsoever. They don't play such a crucial role. They may play a more dominant role in the future, but for the purpose of the purpose of this video, we're just leaving them out for now and concentrating on the other variables. Okay, and just to quickly recap, the variables measured by weather stations are temperature, humidity, rainfall, wind speed, wind direction, air pressure, light intensity, UV index, and they are the primary ones. They're not necessarily the only ones, but these are the primary variables being measured by weather stations, both for professional as well as home weather stations. And these are the primary weather variables or elements of the weather that's being used in professional as well as home weather stations. Some of your more basic weather stations may measure only temperature or air pressure or maybe humidity, while some of your advanced weather stations measure the full array of different elements of the weather to enable them to make more accurate forecasts, or monitor changes in the climate, or even make better forecasting models. Whatever the case, all these different weather variables play an important role in the measurements that the weather stations make. I hope this has been helpful. If you couldn't find exactly what you want from this video, you can always, like I said in the beginning of this video, read the full article in the description below this video, and get some more information if you need additional information as well. If you like this kind of video, give me a like, it helps me a lot. You can also make sure you don't miss out on any upcoming videos explaining different weather phenomena with different weather terms, what they are, how they occur, what the characteristics are, by hitting the subscribe button as well as a notification button next to it, and you'll be reminded as soon as another video gets released. Like I said, I hope you've enjoyed this, I hope this has been helpful, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until next time, keep your eye on the weather. Cheers.